The Panthers, who've been on the clock since the end of December, will really be on the clock. Ron Rivera, formerly defensive coordinator, San Diego, is now their head coach. What is he saying about the possibility of Cam Newton as the #1 overall pick?
You know, I had a long conversation with Ron Rivera last night about Cam Newton and the other players at the top of their draft board, but I was specifically interested, Mike, and I know Ron Rivera from his days in Philadelphia. I was interested in his interaction personally with Cam Newton with respect to all the question marks that have been relayed about Newton on the football field and off. And Rivera told me he had over a dozen conversations over the phone and in person with Cam Newton, and that he feels all of his questions have been answered about Newton, and he feels that Newton really does have the NFL DNA to succeed at this level. And when I talked to Marty Hurney, I specifically asked him, you know, we hear this question over and over again about Cam Newton very recently. Is Cam Newton wired to be great in the NFL? And Hurney said to me, Mike, very frankly, he said he's driven to be great. So they have 4 guys at the top of their board, but be shocked if they don't take Cam Newton, Mike.
Marty Hurney's their GM. I know you're checking both sides of the story, so what are you hearing from Cam Newton's camp?
What I'm hearing from Cam Newton's camp is it's graduation day. He has brought his family to New York. He has brought George Whitfield. This quarterback's guru has been training him since January 22nd out in San Diego. And I had a long conversation with Whitfield about Cam Newton's mindset. He said he's very, very focused on being the #1 pick and getting in and really figuring out what the Carolina Panthers want to put him through to get him on the football field as early as possible. But, you know, the Panthers still can't talk to him contractually, so whatever happens, it's in a temporary state because they don't know what time this guy is going to be able to get in here.
Where there's news, there's Sal. He's in Carolina with the Panthers, with us throughout our draft coverage. Sal, back with you later on. Now, it's a very odd free fall. Let's pull the ripcord. 3 years ago, Carolina, if you remember, had the #1 seed. They had a phenomenal season. John Fox was their head coach and a very successful run. Now, he's the coach in Denver at the Broncos pick #2. They've drafted offense heavy here, first 5 picks on offense last year. Want to bring Ed Werder in from the Broncos headquarters. So, Ed, what's the Broncos thought process as they're in rare air for them, #2 overall pick?
Right, this is the highest pick, Mike, in the 51-year history of the Broncos, and it follows their 4-12 debacle that got Josh McDaniels fired last year. John Fox told me this will be a defensive-oriented draft, and if they stay at the #2 pick, there seems to be growing sentiment within the building about Von Miller. The Broncos consider him the most dynamic pass rusher, even though most mock drafts have had them with Marcel Darius, the Alabama defensive tackle, for most of the preseason. One more big development here, Mike, is that in the past few minutes, Brian Dawkins, the defensive secondary leader on this football team, showed up here at Bronco headquarters with nearly a dozen other Broncos players, including former first-round picks Robert Ayers and Noshawn Moreno. They met in the cafeteria with team president Joe Ellis, who told them that the Broncos were suspending football activities pending further direction from the NFL. So it seems the lockout continues as far as the Broncos are concerned.
Interesting. What we're seeing is players around the league are going, just make a record that you were there and try to show up for work for any future potential court hearings down the line, or roster bonuses and workout bonuses. Lastly, I saw on SportsCenter a short time ago some quotes from your conversation with John Elway, now making the decisions, Vice President of Football Operations, regarding a first-round quarterback of last year, Tim Tebow.
Right, Mike, and obviously Tim Tebow is suffering from this work stoppage as much as any young player in football. But, you know, John Elway told me that he believes devoutly in Tim Tebow, calling himself Tebow's biggest fan, saying that if he's the player we hope he can be, not the player they know he can be, interesting to say, note the semantics there, that the Broncos are, quote, in pretty darn good shape. Now, Elway recognizes that having viewed and scrutinized the 3 starts that Tebow made last year as a rookie, that he needs to improve his accuracy, he needs to improve his footwork and his mechanics in general, and that can only happen on the practice field. But Elway said he's really impressed with the guy's intangibles, calls him a guy you have to pull out of the weight room and take off the practice field because he wants to throw so many footballs. And he said, I've told Tebow that you can do a lot of things as a quarterback that most other quarterbacks in the NFL can't do, and that's great, he said. But if you're going to be a champion and the Broncos are going to win Super Bowls, you have to be able to do that from the pocket. And Elway told me that he believes, Mike, that Tebow will eventually be able to do that. He doesn't know what the timeline is, particularly now. He doesn't know if it'll be this fall or if it'll be a year from now, but he thinks eventually Tebow can get there.
So essentially, on draft day 2011, we're saying the same things about Tim Tebow we said on draft day 2010. Ed Werder in Denver, Sal Paolantonio, Carolina, all more experts around the league. Everybody, all hands on deck for our draft coverage. We'll have a SportsCenter special on the clock at 3 Eastern, NFL Live at 4 Eastern. Then another SportsCenter special. Steve Young, Trent Dilfer, Ron Jaworski, Tom Jackson, Keyshawn Jackson, Chris Carter. Everybody's in the house. Also, the college football angle of this on ESPNU, Chris Berman and company with the draft from New York. Live at 8 Eastern, you'll see all the picks Thursday, Friday, Saturday here on ESPN. As stuff happens, we'll be here throughout the next few hours on SportsCenter.
Carson Palmer has said he will retire if the Bengals don't trade him. We go to Cincinnati.